It's a Dota Weekly Show!
Yay!
Hey guys, you're watching the Dota Weekly Show, a show that tells you exactly what's been happening in the Dota universe for the past week. I'm Luminous, your host for the show, and let's get right into the news. So in the past week, a lot of big Chinese tournament has happened. First it was the WCG, and then it was the CPL, and the results were somewhat surprising. First in WCG, it was Tyloo versus IG, and Tyloo surprisingly beat IG. I say surprisingly because IG has been quite dominating in the last couple of weeks. So leading up to it, and especially with that new deal, sponsorship deal, I thought IG would be on fire. So Tyloo beating them, quite surprising. Right back in the CPL, it was Tyloo versus IG again, and this time Tyloo did lose to IG. In a rather stompy fashion. From these two tournament results, there's a lot of things I want to talk about. For the first one is, well, Tyloo and IG are kind of the best team in China, but what's surprising is no other team is even in the picture. Like, there's no third contender, which is surprisingly odd for the Chinese scene, because generally most teams are very near each other's skill level. They compete very regularly, and I'm just surprised that no even challenge these two teams. So of course the roster change that's been happening throughout China right now is one huge aspect. And with Dota 2 tournament coming up here, it can mean that some of the European teams, some of the better ones, especially like MYM, will have a huge shot in terms of claiming the first right from the Chinese, and that is going to be a very unprecedented event. So we'll leave the news from there. Of course, you can always check out more news on SG Gamer or Ghost to Gamer. So yeah, that's pretty much from the news. But the mechanics for this section is pretty big. It's called Invisibility. I'm sure you guys know what it is. Invisibility really boggles down to two main things. First, you have permanent invisibility, and then windwalk based invisibility. So let's talk about the permanent one. So Rikimaru's ult is a permanent invisibility. Treant's Nature's Guise, or Slark's ult, or Podum's Moonlight Shadow, and Broodmother Weaver, for example, are all considered as permanent invisibility spells. There's nothing too special about permanent invisibility spells, given that most of them has a specific fade time. The only thing I want to talk about there is Broodmother's fade time, because the Broodmother web is based on an aura, and because of that, the fade time gets very funky. When you're going into invis, usually takes between 2 to 3.5 seconds. When you're coming out of the invis, it takes around 2 to 5 seconds, 5.5 seconds. So that's the only funky thing about fade time. The cool thing about permanent invis is that if you stack a double permanent invis, for example, if you use Moonlight Shadow plus Riki O, if you use Nature's Guise plus Broodmother Web, Moonlight Shadow plus Web, what the cool thing is that your unit could attack and stay invis at the same time. That's pretty crazy stuff to me. I don't think it's really a exploit or a bug or anything like that, because the Slark's ultimate, the one where you attack and stay invis, that is based on double invisibility, double permanent invisibility. So you could actually try it out in games, and I think that's pretty cool. So that's pretty much it for permanent invis, which is not that not too big of a deal. Windwalk invis is kind of a different story. Most, or actually all, in windwalk spells have a backstab damage. Now, some windwalk spells like Leap, for example, has 0 backstab damage, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is that all windwalk spells have a backstab parameter that's either turned on or turned off. When you have a backstab parameter that's turned on, you will come out of invisibility after your attack damage has been dealt. If you have a backstab parameter of off, you will come out of invis before your damage stop, right? Your attack animation happens. It's only a split second difference, but there is a difference, and that's good, worth noting out. Melee heroes could place buffers when they're attacking out of windwalk. So, for example, let's say you have a Juggernaut with Lothar's Edge, and then also a Stygian, you could actually give that -6 armor debuff, also with your backstab damage from the Lothar's Edge. So that's pretty cool. Only melee heroes, so range hero can't do that. If you want to check out more melee versus range difference when placing buffs, I did do another Dota Weekly show covering that. I think it's like 3 or 4. Check that one out. The biggest difference between Windwalk invisibility and permanent invisibility is the ability to cast spells and stay within Windwalk. The most common example we see of this is Shadow Fiend casting his ult out within Lothar's Edge, and you notice that his animation starts and he doesn't break out of invis. If you try that with Moonlight Shadow, if you try that in Invis Rune, you will break out of of invis. So a couple of spells that you could do it. For example, you could use Sniper's Assassinate. So you could go into Lodars and then Assassinate, and you will only reveal after Assassinate is hit. Same thing with Furion's Teleport, of course Shadow Fiend's ult as we talked about, I think Spirit Breaker's ult as well. So a couple of spells that could take advantage of this, but I think Shadow Fiend is the most apparent one. So that's kind of the big difference between permanent invis and Windwalk invis. So how do we reveal invisible units? Of course, Dust, Sentry Wards, Gem, or the standard thing. Some spells reveal invis, such as Track, Amplify. We all know those ones. Lightning Bolt, Wrath of Nature, Charge of Darkness, things like that all reveal invis. Now for the permanent invis side, there's a couple of spells that will only specifically reveal permanent invis spells, but not Windwalk spells. For example, most silence will reveal invisible or permanent invisible spells. So if you have a Drow silence, if you have Fear, that will reveal invisible spells. Hex will also reveal permanent invisible spells, but not Windwalk based spells. So that's very important to know. Especially if you're picking some silences, if you're picking some hexes, that is very important to know that you can hex a Ricky and he will stay, revealed. But if you hex a Weaver who's going into Sakuchi, he's gonna just pop right into Sakuchi. So that's pretty important to know. A lot of pause-based spells will reveal permanent invisibility as well. So for example, if you cast a Chronosphere on a permanently based invisible spell, they will just come right up. So that's pretty good to know as well. Some ensnare / entangle based spells would keep people visible. For example, if you Frostbite a Weaver and he tries to go invis, he won't be able to. Meeple Net, Naga Net, Pit of Malice, the list goes on and on. The thing about these spells is that they won't reveal them when they're invis. So example, if you have an invis Gondar running by and you use, let's say, a Overgrowth, it's not gonna make that Gondar pop out invis. However, if the Gondar is invis and you use Overgrowth, then he will stay visible until that Overgrowth goes away. So that's a couple of spells to reveal invisible units. The last thing about invisibility, which is not really invisibility, is projectile dodging. Of course, it's a very popular thing to pop into invis when you see a projectile coming, whether it's a magical missile, whether it's just a single range attack. Most spells or most projectiles can be dodged while going into invis. Now some spells have different effects. You could dodge parts of the effects, but not all of the effects. For example, if you're trying to dodge arrow with invis, you will dodge the stun time, but you won't dodge the damage. You'll get hit of the damage. Again, for the full list of what you can dodge and what you can't dodge, check out the guide where I got most of this information from in the description box below. And a couple of game related tips that's not within the guide is when you're ganking a Potom, do suggest taking some dust. Like if the Potom is really getting out of control, because as you know, you could dodge magic missiles or whatever with Leap, but that is based on it. Leap has a 0.01 second invisible spell, so if you dust and then your magic missile, no matter how good that player's timing is, he's still getting hit by that magic missile. So that is just some strategy related thing that you could kind of work against this leaping dodge or whatever other kind of dodging there is. That's pretty much it for the mechanics of this week, but we're gonna apply the mechanics in the Lumi So Fun challenge. So in this week's challenge, we're gonna play with some invisible heroes and only invisible heroes. You could only pick teams with invisibility. So Potom, Broodmother, Ricky Maru, Gondar. I'm going to put the full list of all the available heroes within the description box. Here's the kicker. As a team of 5, it's a team challenge, so 3 or 4 of you guys. As a team of 5, you have to roll at the beginning of the game. Yeah, you have to type dash roll, and whoever gets the lowest roll has to buy a gem with their starting gold, and then drop it right in front of their middle tower and be like, yo, here's a free gem. We have invisible spells, and we have a free gem for you. That's kicker number 1. Kicker number 2 is whenever you kill them, you trash talk. Like, I'm making you trash talk. Whenever you kill them, you trash talk and say, did you know Ensnare reveals invisible units? Like, stuff like that. Give them the trivia I just gave you and tell them to the pups. So the point of this challenge is, hopefully you get to realize why invisible heroes kind of suck, really. That's why they're not in pro games that often. Of course, you have Broodmother and Weaver, but for the most part, they're not in the pro game for a reason, because they're easily countered by Sentry Ward and by that gem that you're giving them. and 2, hopefully that you can get a little bit educated by telling the trivia, the trash talk trivia to them, and hopefully the pups will get a little bit educated by getting trash talk trivia, bounced to them. So things like, hey, did you know lightning bolt reveals invisible, things like that. So I think it's going to be a very fun challenge. Of course, if you're a mega boss, you could even combine with previous challenge as well. You could pick invisible team and go with 2 inventory challenge if you want to. If you go pick invisible team and go a Roche every 8 minutes, every 10 minutes if you want to. Hey, the sky is the limit. Use your creativity, make it challenging, make it fun. And I'm looking forward to commenting a game like that. So that's it for this Dota Weekly Show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And until next time, as always, this is Luminous signing out. See you guys.